Okay, the new Rakarth update just hit Total War Warhammer 2 with the new FLC of Rakarth. Now, what I'm going to do here is go through those patch notes, but if you just want a down and dirty, just kind of Spark Notes version of these notes, I've got that here for you right now, and you can decide to stick around if you want to get into the nitty and gritty. So here's some of the critical notes for the Rakarth update. So you've got the Sisters of Twilight had their Forge of Daith completely reworked with a brand new bespoke UI, as CA calls it. Also, Crone Hellebron has had a total overhaul to the Death Knight system as well as the Blood Voyage system, with an improvement to some of her skills. Lokhir Fellheart's Blessed Dread has been retooled, as well as some of his skills and rights as well. Some other Dark Elf legendary lords and generic lords have had their skills and stats fixed up along with some other Dark Elf units. Dark Elf rating stance has been reduced from 50% to 25% in movement cost. Black arc abilities are set at 60-second cooldowns, so they don't scale up anymore whenever you upgrade. I guess that was something that was a big problem in the past. And I didn't even realize that was a thing. I just assumed it was always 60 seconds because I'm not smart in the brain. But Skaven had some balance changes done to their movement stances and corruption, basically making it so that Skaven AI is less annoying to be around, especially when it comes to the Skaven AI minor factions. They've lost the ability to do certain things like the Doom and Pestilent schemes to just reduce it from being so spammy from the Skaven. Then, of course, there's been several unit balance changes. So that's it. I mean, that's a minute 40 seconds. That's your just quick down and dirty for the Rakarth update. If you want to just jump on in and go into it, by all means, go for it. Go ahead and shut the video down if you wish. But before you do, please, by all means, leave a comment, subscribe, like, all that kind of stuff. It does help us out a ton, any YouTuber you do watch. If you do want to see some really cool Rakarth content, by the way, Indie Pride, Great Book of Grudges, Indie Pride from Milk and Cookies Total War, that is, Lore Master of Sotek, Turn, everyone's been covering it in depth. I figured with all of them covering it right now, no one's really had a chance to hit the patch notes head on, so I figured I would do that. So please jump on over to their channels if you want to see Rakarth in action. Let's jump into some of the nitty and gritty of these patch notes. So, what else update with a Forge of Daith 2.0? And there's been a lot of complaints about the Forge of Daith and how it operates, right? Namely the fact that you lose some abilities. It's all just done through dilemmas. Well, this now fixes it. This update sees a revamped version of the Sisters of Twilight's Forge of Daith. Instead of being driven by dilemmas, the system will now have a bespoke panel that offers greatly improved visibility and choice regarding which items you'll be able to unlock. So what this really does is now the player has full agency over what items they can unlock, upgrade, reforge, and in what order. We have decided to tone down a few items due to the ability to chain or reforge them. So Dreaming Boots have had their speed increase, moved from 10 to 15, but campaign movement from 50 to 35%. Twilight Standard recruitment cost was reduced from a negative 50 to 30. You know what? Actually, I guess we're not going to change this color. Okay, well, I'm going to make this red. Basically, if you see anything red, it is a nerf. If you see anything green, it is a bonus. Or in this case, I'm just dumb and didn't do that the right way. Eagle Mask's research rate was 100. It has now been moved to 75%. And Dreaming Bow's construction cost was both reduced from 50 to 33 in the cost and time reduction areas. So you can see those right there. So basically, it just kind of prevents you from really gaming the system with the Forge of Daith. These aren't critical nerfs, I would say. It's just mainly kind of bringing things in order and balance with this new Forge. Now, for the Dark Elf updates, we get quite a bit. So Crone Hellebron, we've changed the effects granted by the Death Knight bar, so that they provide more bonuses at higher levels and reduced penalties at lower levels. So here are the new effects for levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we can take a look at these really quick. Level 1 gives Chaos Corruption increase, but a -4 to Public Order. Starting Vigor for Crone Hellebron is winded and active blood voyages will take several attrition damage from desertion. So that is, of course, your level 1 here, but your bottom line, you're below the midpoint at level 3. So level 3 is now 5% physical resistance for Crone Hellebron, Witch Elves, Sisters of Slaughter, Death Hags, Canine Assassins, and Harganeth Executioners, with also a reduction by 25% for Vigor loss, +2 to Public Order for all provinces, 5 leadership, and active blood voyages will take light attrition damage from desertion. And this scales all the way up to level 5 here, with some real juicy bonuses. 20% physical resistance from all the aforementioned units that we talked about in level 3. Perfect vigor for those units as well. On turn start, a chance for lords to gain +2 loyalty, 6 public order, 10 leadership, and they will replenish, the Blood Voyage itself will replenish slowly, even in enemy territory, which is an awesome benefit there. All these effects are also shared with the Blood Voyage. So what that means is these effects will be shared with the Blood Voyage, which is very powerful if you think about it. Now, the Blood Voyage itself has been retooled a little bit, now has greatly increased movement range, which is great. It's no longer unbreakable, which is quite good, but instead receives force-wide perfect vigor and additional benefits depending upon Hellebrand's current Death Knight level. Depending upon, not defending. No longer unable to replenish. Again, I think that's dependent upon this, of course, right? So if it's level 5, that kind of nixes this statement right here. But for some of her skills, the Greatest Bride of Cain now grants 10% weapon strength to Witch Elf, Sisters of Slaughter, and Harganeth Executioner, as well as Champion of Cain, giving 10% missile resistance to both Witch Elves and Executioners. A nice little improvement there, really kind of making her the Queen of Harganeth and buffing all those units that are most associated with them in the lore, which is quite nice. Now for Big Daddy Lokhir Fellheart, who is kind of been pushed to the wayside a little bit here with Rakarth, so it's nice to see him get a little love. Lokhir's starting Black Arc is now a bespoke special agent type. It has the following special benefits. Unique innate trait for its Admiral, Kraken's Claw, which provides increased base Black Arc growth. Unique 2-level landmark building, Tower of the Blessed Dread, which grants the Blessed Dread increased movement and additional bonuses to nearby armies, which is great. Then the variant model previously applied to Black Arcs and Lokhir's faction will now just be applied to this one. As before, the Arc's appearance will change as its main building tree is upgraded, so you can see those things evolve as intended. Now, we also get an update to the Rite of Anathrama. It now grants the following for 5 turns. 50% sacking income, 50% raising income, and 10 Black Arc growth, as well as 20% movement range. Most of the previous effects of this rite have been incorporated into Lokhir's personal skill tree. So it's really cool to see this because it makes Lokhir that really raid-centric legendary lord for the Dark Elves. And when we talk about the actual raid stance movement reduction, that's even better with this. So really nice to see that. Also, his skills got really retooled here too. Kraken Lord, his innate trait, it will now cause fear for Corsair units in the Lord's army and immunity to deep sea, storm, and reef attrition for the Lord's army, on the whole army, that is. They just added this to both the Corsair and the Charybdis, deep sea and reef attrition resistance. So it's nice to see those added to the whole army as well. Bound by Blood has a new effect of increasing public order and favored corruption in the local province. Effect removed, +1 Lord recruitment rank. The Corsair Noble gets 100, that's the skill, not a unit. 100% armor-piercing missile damage for Corsairs, which is so good with those hand bows. They're going to be doing even more damage on the move. Ahead of the Tide, Vanguard deployment for all Corsairs, which is beautiful, and then stock for Corsairs as well. So really good. So like I was saying, you really can see how Lokhir Fellheart is really coming together with a lot of these new skills and effects. Master of the Blessed Dread, +1 uses for Black Arc bombardment abilities, coupled with that 60-second recycle, static point. That's quite nice. Then Patriarch of the Fellhearts, Lord recruitment rank bonus increased from 3 to 5. New effect, -75 right cost for the Sacrifice of Nathrama and Mothlan, and then +8 melee attack when fighting at sea, Lord's army. So some awesome effects there. Morathi here gets Dark Manipulator innate trait, now provides a -50% cost and -5 second cooldown to sacrifice to Hecate. 5 turn cooldown for sacrifice to Hecate. Now, for the Supreme Sorceress, they get a new skill at level 10 called the Student of the Dark Tower. This will reduce vigor loss reduction by 50% and cooldown of all spells by 10%, but you also get a nice bound spell, Arnzapal's Black Horror, which is typically bound to an actual scroll or item. And also, the Supreme Sorceress now benefits from any recruitment rank or experience bonus granted to regular sorceresses through rights or through legendary lord traits. So it's nice to see this being added into the game, including those from the Sacrifice of Hecate. So that's the right that we were talking about just a second ago with Morathi. High Beastmaster's Whiplash ability, now available without skill point investment in campaign. Old Whiplash ability replaced with Kindle of Fury. Now, as far as some other general Dark Elf updates, we have these right here. Corsair and Charybdis units now have innate immunity to sea or deep sea and reef attrition, like I was saying. All buildings in the Cult of Cain and Hired Killers chains have had their main settlement level requirement reduced by 1 level. Their costs and effects have been adjusted accordingly. So I believe it was level 3 before, now it is level 2. Feel free to correct me in the comments section below if it was level 4 and 5. I can't remember off the top of my head, unfortunately. The cooldown for Black Arc bombardment abilities will no longer increase in duration as the ability is upgraded. Again, locking it at 60 seconds. Reduce movement cost for entering raid stance from 50% to 25%. Honestly, this is for all Dark Elf factions. This is such a huge one, right? Because in the lore, they always talk about how the Dark Elves are raiding everywhere. They take prisoners and slaves from all over the map. And this is just a really cool kind of nod to that and makes the Dark Elves make a little bit more sense as that pure raiding faction. Tweak the Black Arc map to improve line of sight and pathfinding. And then some technology changes. With Driven by Vengeance, technology now grants 4 melee attack for Bleak Swords, Dread Spears, and Black Arc Corsairs. And naval training technology now grants 4 melee attack to all forces when fighting at sea. Quite nice. Some little bug fixes here for the Sacrifice to Hekarti now affect sources of all lores rather than just a few. Black Arcs no longer have immortality skill in their tree. They already received this by default, so spending a point on this skill had no additional effect. And Black Arc's defensive forces will now spawn correctly on the high ground when the Black Arc is attacked. So quite nice. Now for Skaven, it's more of a balance. Some things have been brought down, some things have been brought up. For instance, stances now are a little bit more dynamic. So the stock stance now reduces ambush success chance by 15%. This does not affect the Beastman equivalent. Then various stances will now affect ambush defense chance. So minus 25% for forced march, plus 100% for besieging, plus 25% chance for underway, world routes, or beast paths, and plus 75% chance for encampment stance. So kind of, again, balances out that stock stance, making it so it's a little bit more dynamic and not such a constant ambush buffet. Now, Skaven Corruption, again, has been changed a little bit here. It's mainly making it so that Untainted has been swapped out for Skaven Corruption in certain buildings. And the real focus here is by shifting some Skaven buildings over to Untainted, we're hoping to make being near Skaven less frustrating, as well as giving Skaven players more tools with which to manage their corruption. So the Clan Warriors, Assassin's Chain, Orders Chain, and Order Chain all give Untainted instead of Skaven Corruption now. The Plagues Chain, local Skaven Corruption reduced from 246 to 234. So a less drastic of a increase, a little bit more of a gradual scale. Adjacent regions Skaven Corruption reduced from 124 to 112. I said 111. So you can see how that's got a little bit of a nerf and just, again, keeping it a little bit less, infectious. That was not supposed to be a pun, but it happened anyway. The Shattered Skies Skaven Blight Landmark, reduced faction-wide adjacent regions Skaven Corruption effect from 6 to 3. So while this all can be kind of looked at as a nerf, I overall look at it as a positive improvement upon the game because it's just kind of, the Skaven Corruption was just rampant everywhere, and it could be 2 regions removed, 1 region removed. It just helps to kind of make things a little bit more concise and neat, especially with the amount of AI Skaven factions in the game. I would imagine with Warhammer 3 coming out, we'll start to see some some Skaven factions probably removed from portions of the Darkland and swapped out with their actual Warhammer 3 race counterparts. So I'm excited to see how that kind of affects and changes this balance, and if it's kind of an organic thing. Will this change again when we get closer to a Warhammer 3 launch? And is that pre-order quote-unquote DLC for Warhammer 3 going to be added in Warhammer 2, just like Norska was? So I wonder if that's going to be something that's going to affect this in some way, shape, or form. But Menace Below, we have fixed various issues with the way that Menace Below charges were being calculated. This would have to do with your balance of power, how that bonus was actually being attributed to your army. So Skaven forces will no longer receive an undocumented bonus charge of Menace Below from Skaven Corruption or similar effects, such as Queek's Lord trait, and that has been updated to compensate for that. Purchasing the first level of Menace Below in the pre-battle screen will now always grant the stated number of additional charges, which is nice. But previously, if another effect granting Menace Below charges was active, then the first level of the ability would have no effect. So Overall, this will mean a slight reduction to the number of menace below charges passively gained via Skaven corruption. However, the player will more reliably be able to generate additional charges via food purchases or undercity buildings. So you can see how that balance kind of tricks in. Now, minor Skaven factions will no longer perform the Scheme of Doom or the Pestilent Scheme. Again, like I was saying, kind of reducing that overall kind of clutter on the campaign map from those minor factions here. AI Skaven factions are less likely to take skills that boost ambush success chance, again reducing stock's kind of prominence on the map. Reduced baseline number of charges of the Skaven Warp Bomb, ability to 1 additional charges can be gained by upgrading the garrison building in major settlements. Now, I guess, this could really be looked at as a nerf, but I look at a lot of stuff with Skaven as really a balance to make it so they themselves play a little bit more fun and less gamey on the campaign map, and fighting against them is a little less annoying. So that's kind of how I've envisioned this. I think a lot of people that mainline Skaven for whoa, mainline it, woof. They main Skaven for their campaigns. Maybe this is a huge nerf for them, so I apologize if I kind of got that wrong for you. But some other bug fixes and campaign balance changes we've got: increase the base growth on most Tomb King buildings by around 20%, less of a stagnant play style, a little bit more dynamic now. And for the love of God, this one is so huge. Dryka has calmed down a bit and will now scream less frequently on the campaign map. Oh God, she was screaming all the time. It was so annoying. But reduces Dryka's diplomatic hostility towards vampire counts, since she starts pretty much right on their doorstep, and a little bit easier to get any kind of diplomacy going with them. Now, as far as battle unit balance changes, we've had quite a bit done here. Adjusted all missile chariots shots per volley stat to better reflect the number of riders firing from the same chariot. This means several missile chariot units' missile strength stat will increase. This does not mean their performance has increased. This change is just a better representation of the performance that they always had. So just a little bit more transparency on how their missile strength is actually done. And this is kind of true of a lot of ranged units. You don't really get the raw damage that they're doing. It's more like, hey, this is this unit's entire weapon strength done for its reload, and it shows you if you hover over it, the reload is factored at this rate with this many volleys per that rate, so on and so forth. So this is just, again, increasing that transparency to you, the player. Now, a number of tweaks for Dark Elves here. Some nerfs to the High Elf Beast Master. The High Elf Beef Master. His melee attack has been changed from 60 to 50, charge bonus down from 45 to 40, kind of minor there, but melee defense increased from 45 to 55, making him a lot more tanky. Now, on the Scourge Runner Chariot, we see a lot of these things applied as well. Charge bonus changed from 70 to 40. Armor piercing damage, though, brought from 100 to 120, which is nice. Base missile damage changed from 12 to 15, which is nice. And AP missile damage brought up from 40 to 50. So an overall buff to his Scourge Runner Chariot variant. Now, the High Beastmaster on a Manticore, though, has had his bonus versus large reduced from 25 to 15, unfortunately. Now, for the Wood Elves, I've highlighted Ariel because she's gotten quite a bit of a nerf here. Leadership changed from 100 to 90, removed Unbreakable, but her mass was increased. She was getting knocked around the battlefield quite easily. Anytime you watch any of the replays on Turin or Milk and Cookies channel, and you see anyone using Ariel, she's a great legendary lord and very strong, but she just gets pulverized, like just knocked around like a ping pong ball all over the place. So that has been hopefully reduced quite a bit. The Glade Lord has had a swap. I always put this in red and green, but I really honestly look at it as an overall buff. So their base weapon damage was moved from 260 to 130, but their AP damage was swapped from 100 to 250. So that's always the way they do those things. You have AP damage increased, but the base weapon damage has to be lowered. If you don't do that, it just does a disgusting amount of damage. So 250 raw damage coming out of the Glade Lord Great Stag, and that's reflected in both variants for the Glade Lord and the Glade Lord female, 260 to 130 and 100 to 250 for her stats as well. The Sylvan Knights have had their hit points change from 174 to 157 per model, overall reducing the overall hit points, of course, of the Lost Sylvan Knights. And Giant Wolves and Norscan Ice Wolves, I didn't even realize this. they've had their building damage changed from 40 to 5. So I guess they were particularly good at cracking open gates or ripping apart battering rams. Greenskins, Super Squig, additional hit points changed from 110 to 660, getting that squig action in there. Skaven, Thought the Unclean, melee defense chance changed from 55 to 45 on his Brood Horror. He is disgusting on his Brood Horror. So this is, I would think, a little bit of a much needed nerf to kind of bring him in line. Also, the Mount Entity was brought from 3,500 to 2,000, making him a little bit easier to push around. Now, the same thing we can see with the Packmaster, 40 to 30 with his melee defense, and that same 1,500 reduction to Mount Entity, and once more with the Warlord. The Brood Horror himself also losing some melee defense down to 30. Missile resistance from, I do not know why I put that in green. That is definitely a red. From 15 to 0. Entity mass change from 35 to 2,000 as well. Moving into the Wolf Rats, their melee defense was reduced from 21 to 19 on both variants. Our Lizardmen here are also getting a reduction to the entity mass of the Ancient Salamander, down 1,500 points as well. Now, some ability balance changes we've got for the Dark Elves. Whiplash ability can now target large entities, but is no longer prevented from targeting lords and heroes. Seraphon quails in fear. So you can use this now to bolster them if you so wish. All Dark Elf abilities have Black Arc Dark Elf abilities, sorry, have 60-second cooldown, no longer increasing cooldown as ability is upgraded, like we've said many times in this video. For the Skaven, they've had a lot of tweaks to some of their abilities from the workshop. Cellular instability, AP damage from 54 to 30, added phase that damages self, around 600 damage to self. Instability level 4, AP damage from 63 to 60. Warp Bomb, AP damage from 72 to 45. Pestilent Birth, wins and magic costs from 14 to 16. And that is, of course, a nerf because it's now going to cost you more to use Pestilent Birth. So moving into Wood Elves, we have some other stuff here with Acorns of the Oak of Ages. AP damage from 12 to 10. Wind-up time, though, has been increased as well from 1 to 3. I was on the phone when I did that. I'm sorry. That should be read too. Number of uses for the Conjoined Destiny from 1 to infinite. Rouse to Wrath, number of uses from 2 to 1. Transformation of Caton, though, if you're on an Eagle, has had its cost reduced down from 18 to 14, which is quite nice. Ancient's Protection, duration from 10 to 12 seconds. And then lastly, a huge nerf with the Cloak of Aisha, dropping physical resistance from 44% down to 20%. So a huge crack on the Cloak of Aisha. But that concludes our patch notes here for the Rakarth update. This is an FLC that you can get access to for Total War Warhammer 2, so make sure you claim it. I think you have to do it through Total War Access, so make sure you're doing that if you want to play as the mighty High Beastmaster Rakarth. We will be doing probably a lore video on this guy just to kind of do one. We've done one for all the other legendary lords for the Beastmen. But it's kind of cool to see him being brought into the game. This was one of the ones that I speculated would be the FLC alongside a Lizardman and Beastman DLC. So interesting that we've gotten this one early. It kind of makes a little bit of sense though, because we've got the Dark Eldar, the Drukhari Codex coming out. I think it's pre-orderable in 4 days. So this kind of makes a little sense. And I've got a video coming out on that I'm going to talk about in just a little bit. But look forward to more stuff on the channel as always, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment below, all that fun action. But let me know in the comments if this is a good update for you. Do you mainline those Dark Elves, or do you mainline the Skaven? And this is kind of pissing you off a little bit. By all means, let your opinion be known. But as always, have a good one and take care.